Hey, what's up? So real quick, if you've been building with React Native for a while, you'll probably run into this. You need something simple, a slider, a picker, a date picker, and React Native just doesn't give it to you. So you go find some package, install it, and kind of pray that it still works after your next update. I've been there more times than I like to admit. Expo UI is the thing that actually fixed that for me, and I want to walk you through it. Just you and me from the ground up. By the end of this, you're gonna actually get how it works and you'll build a real native screen with it. Now, full transparency before we start, these lessons are pulled straight from my React Native course. I'm putting them out here for free for a couple of reasons. One, I genuinely want your feedback on them, so please tell me if it lands. And two, yeah, I'm hoping that you like them enough to go check out the full course, because honestly, this is just a small slide of what's in there. And when I say the full course, I don't mean more videos. You get the code examples, so you can actually copy them straight into your own applications. You get cheat sheets, so you are not scrubbing through a video just trying to find one specific thing, the full written script of every single lesson, and useful agent skills so you can move the same way I do. And all of it is lifetime access to, so you pay once and you get every update, every new course I add down the road. No subscription, nothing like that. But hey, zero pressure. Either way, I think these two lessons are gonna help you, so let's get into it. Welcome back to Beto. I'm excited to start with you this new section about Expo UI. I've been using Expo UI since the alpha days and I'm extremely bullish on it. I believe it's gonna change how we build React Native applications because it allows you to use truly native components using SwiftUI and Jetpack Compose for Android. So in this video, I'm gonna teach you what is Expo UI, why it exists, and how it works under the hood. Let's get into it. I was planning on creating a diagram to explain what is Expo UI and how it works, but since Claude is really good at writing HTML, I decided to create a mini website. I'm going to leave the HTML down here in case you want to, run it and see how it works under the hood. Maybe change it or ask Claude to expand on a specific thing. But let's just start with what is Expo UI. So Expo UI is a set of UI primitives that allow you to render SwiftUI and Jetpack Compose views in your React Native application using JSX syntax. So if you've been developing with React Native for a while, you know that it used to be a pain because React Native only provides a very minimum set of primitives or components views that you can use. So for example, it doesn't come with a slider, it doesn't come with a date time picker, it doesn't come with a segment control, and these are pretty basic components that almost every application needs. So previously you needed to go Google for these libraries, maybe React Native Community Slider, maybe React Native Picker, install them in your project, but suddenly you are depending on many authors, the maintainers of these packages. You don't really know the health of these packages because it's maintained by the community. And the worst part, when you need to upgrade your React Native version, it will break because the packages that you are depending on are not compatible with the latest version. So you need to wait for the maintainers to make it compatible with the latest version, or write a patch, or implement your own thing. So it's pretty tough, especially because new frameworks already come with all the UI that you need. And on top of that, some of the packages that the community was using were not native, meaning that are custom implementations with custom styles that feel off, that look off, that don't feel native. So the goal of Expo UI was to provide a set of components that everyone can use that are fully native using SwiftUI and Jetpack Compose, which are modern frameworks developed by Google and Apple to develop native applications for the specific platforms. Now, to really understand how React Native and Expo UI works under the hood, we need to understand all the frameworks that are available to build applications, right? So as you might know, in 2008, the iPhone came out. So Apple released UIKit in 2007 as the framework to create applications for the iPhone. It is an imperative style, meaning that you have to mutate the views manually by doing assignments. It's going to look something like this. You will have a label, right? And then they give you these primitives like UI label or UI button. And then you need to access this instance and set the text manually like this, right? That is imperative. So Google in 2008 released Android Views, which is what React Native uses under the hood. It's a framework, imperative as well, and it's pretty similar, right? Just different name. They call it text view. And then again, you have to pass and assign the value to each view like this. Imperative frameworks, these two allow you to create native applications, right? So Meta in 2015 came up with React Native, which leveraged these two frameworks and created a unique API that was declarative, right? So this was new at the time, and declarative means that you don't have to assign the value to each text. You can just call the tag like this, and this was way better developer experience. Developers loved it. So that's why in 2019, Apple introduced SwiftUI, which is a new framework to create Apple applications, iOS applications, that is declarative. And it has a better syntax. Developers love it. So Google as well, a little later, introduced Jetpack Compose, which is the equivalent. So let's take a look at the syntax. This is way cleaner, as you can see here. Just need a text, just call it, pass the string, boom, you're done. And Jetpack Compose, it's pretty good as well. I've been playing with Jetpack Compose recently to feel more confident to come up and teach you about Expo UI, because you really need to understand these frameworks before diving into Expo UI. So this is how it looks. It is declarative. Now there is a little issue, right? React Native was created in 2015. Does that mean that React Native is now outdated? Does that mean you don't need to use React Native anymore? Does that mean that UIKit and Android views are dead? And the answer is no. UIKit and Android views are still maintained and still pretty relevant, and most of the applications out there in production are still using UIKit and Android views. So something very important to understand here is that the old frameworks never died, okay? They are still maintained, and the new ones, SwiftUI and Jetpack Compose, live inside them. So these new frameworks were created thinking that everyone was already using these imperative frameworks. So UIKit allows you to adopt SwiftUI incrementally if you want. So you can actually combine UIKit and SwiftUI, and we are going to learn more about it in a moment, but that's essentially how Expo UI works. And similarly, Android views can work with Jetpack Compose, so you can have 50-50 of your code. So in 2025, last year, Expo UI was introduced, right? Now, something very important about this as well is that Expo UI, it's not a framework. Expo UI is just a clever API that allows you to leverage that UIKit is compatible with SwiftUI and Android views are compatible with Jetpack Compose. Expo UI leverages this compatibility that allows you to render these views from these two frameworks inside the old systems, inside UIKit, inside Android views, which is what React Native uses today. Now let me give you a more concrete example. As I said before, React Native uses UIKit for iOS. So when you render something like this, a slider, what is happening under the hood is that you are rendering a UIKit view that is using the UI hosting controller API. And this controller API, it's an API that Apple introduced that allows you to have SwiftUI code inside your UIKit code. It's an adapter. You can think of it as a SwiftUI canvas that lives inside this view. This is the native implementation, and this is what Expo UI uses under the hood. So we are not technically using SwiftUI, but instead we're still using UIKit and hosting SwiftUI views using the UI hosting controller API. And once you call this host controller, you can now write SwiftUI inside of it. So we are basically using both frameworks at the same time. And similarly, Android also provides an API. It's called Composer View. Using Android views, instantiate a Compose view, and boom, you can suddenly start writing Jetpack Compose syntax. So to end this lesson, Expo UI is not a framework. It is an API that hosts SwiftUI and Jetpack Compose inside UIKit and the Android View system. The same trick Apple and Google built for their own migrations. Once you know this, the rest is easy. I hope you liked this lesson. I hope you learned something new. I'm going to leave the HTML down here in case you want to play around with it. Welcome back. We now have the mental model of Expo UI, and now we're actually going to start using it. So let's get into it. So we're going to start with SwiftUI. And today I want us to make a really cool exercise, which is going to be translate a SwiftUI screen to Expo UI. So I just created, by the way, a new example application that it's called Expo UI app to start clean. Based on feedback, everyone wants a clean example or a specific feature. So I created this application for Expo UI so you can reference it. If you are also interested in the Xcode project, it's actually open source. I'm gonna leave it in the description as well. And one more thing is that I also created this Expo UI playground a while ago. It's a bit outdated and it's actually fairly complex, so I didn't want to use it for this section of the course. It's not very well organized, but if you want to reference it, I'm gonna leave it down here as well. Cool, so let's start actually translating this. If you take a look at the Xcode section here, we're using a form, right? We already have the navigation, have a toolbar with the button, it's already done. Now let's take a look at the form. The form is going to be the list of items that you can see here. Everything inside this is a form. You can think of a form in SwiftUI as a scroll view, but it's going to style items more nicely. So it's going to look something like this when you add something, okay? So let's use a form. Now, if you take a look, we have forms and sections inside of it. So let's go to the VS Code. I'm going to go to the new to-do screen. So right here, I'm going to create my window. I'm going to instantiate a new SwiftUI view. So every time that we want to use Jetpack Compose or SwiftUI, we need to use a host component. So I'm going to import this from Expo UI. Now, since we are actually developing a fully native iOS screen at this point, I'm gonna just import directly from SwiftUI. Now, notice that we also have Jetpack Compose, but since this is iOS only, let's bring SwiftUI. Now, we created the host. Once you created this window where we can instantiate or start using SwiftUI, it's a good idea to kind of like shift your mind and know that inside this host, you are not going to be writing, your normal React Native components. It's going to be a completely different framework. It's going to be SwiftUI. So in this case, I can bring my form. Let's bring this from Expo UI. Okay. And inside the form, we had a section. So let's import section as well from SwiftUI. Gonna look something like this. Inside the section, I'm going to create a simple text. And the text, I'm gonna bring it from SwiftUI as well. So let me close this like that. And let's come here and import text. Notice that text is coming from SwiftUI as well. If you bring it from React Native and try to use it inside a SwiftUI view, it's gonna break it. Okay, so let's hit save. Let me bring the simulator. Okay, and if I refresh and navigate, I don't see anything. The reason for that is because the actual host is not, it doesn't have a width and height. So let's pass a style. I'm gonna say flex of 1. Let's take a look. Now we do see a component and we suddenly already have the animation of the large title without doing anything. This is kind of like the beauty of SwiftUI, is that they handle a lot of things for you. Usually in React Native, you need to handle everything like the animation, like keyboard handling, all that. And it's pretty annoying, including dark mode, right? So everything is already compatible with dark mode. As you can see here, the text that I created is changing, it's handling, looks beautiful. I honestly really like how this looks like. We can actually customize some things with modifiers, but let's start with creating these two text fields. All right, so instead of the text, I'm going to have a text field from SwiftUI. This is gonna take a placeholder with title. Let's hit save. Now we can see it on the right. We can duplicate and call this description. And notice how this is getting formatted because it's inside the form. And as we add more items, it's gonna just look nice, which is really cool. This is gonna save you a lot of time. Now, like I said, you can also customize some things. Like, for example, let's bring some modifiers here. Each component will take modifiers, and you can pass an array of the modifiers. This is kind of like the syntax of JSX. Usually in Xcode, you will use the dot and then dot and chain all the modifiers, but here you can just pass them in an array. So one of the modifiers that you're gonna be using a lot is gonna be frame. Frame allows you to pass a custom width and height. You can see here, you can see the declaration here. So I'm gonna pass the object and I'm gonna say height of 80, which is what I'm using in the SwiftUI view. I'm talking about the second one. Yeah, this has a frame and the alignment is at the top. So let's do that. I'm gonna say alignment at the top. Hit save. Now it's starting to look like the original design, right? Pay close attention. We have like the items separating, the line separating the items. And in the other design, yeah, we don't have it. And this is because we're hiding it. List row separator. That's actually a modifier that you can use. Let's bring it here. Maybe we can pass it just here. Just pass the visibility as hidden. And if I hit save, now we're suddenly customizing this, right? It's starting to look different, but still we are just inheriting all the container size. It's handling dark and light and still looks unique because we are just changing a couple things here, okay? It's called autofocus. Yep. And let's close that. Let's navigate. And it's gonna be autofocus automatically. Really cool. Now, this is a section, so you can create multiple sections. I really like to do this for my settings screen, and you can take a look at the Inkigo or Platano template that we have for in the organization. And it's basically using a form with sections. That's all. Let's bring another section. By the way, sections can have titles. For example, I'm gonna say title. I don't know, like header. Let me comment this for a second. Now you can see the title here. You can also pass something like footer. Footer, it's actually a React node, meaning that you have to pass a component. So let's bring a text that says footer. Usually I use this for descriptions in the settings. Now this is a bit annoying because it's not suggesting, oh yes, Expo UI, it's safe. You can see the footer at the bottom, right? The world. The beauty of developing SwiftUI applications with Expo UI is that you enjoy hot reloading versus doing it in Xcode. Every time that you change something here, you need to recompile the application. It's usually fast, but as your app grows, you know, it can take a while and it's pretty tedious. Let's take an actual look at the application. We have now a date picker, right? You take a look here, you notice that we are actually not putting this inside a section. So the form component automatically is going to grab the children and it's going to give them a kind of like container inside the form. So let's try to do that without the section. Date picker from SwiftUI, yeah. Let's hit save. Okay, we can see it. It has now its kind of like section, right? What happens if we duplicate this? Okay. It's giving it a section basically, automatically. Okay, so let's actually remove that. We can pass some properties like the title. This is gonna be date. if we pass the title just like that, the form is automatically handling putting the title on the left and the actual picker on the right. But if we take a look at the other phone, we have also the time. So let's check the properties. Displayed components. We can pass what components we want to display. And this actually takes an array, and we can define we want the actual date and we want the hour. Okay, so now we have two. Fully native, supporting liquid glass. Awesome. What else we have? Apart from that, we actually have a toggle. So let's create the toggle. Notice that the toggle actually takes like another view inside of it, right? Instead of just a string for the label. So let's see how we can do that. I'm gonna just call it directly here from SwiftUI. Hit save. That's my toggle. Let's see what properties we can pass here, like is on equal to, let's hard code this for now to be true. There we go. Let's pass a label toggle. Okay, cool. So now it's handling the label automatically, which is really nice. Something interesting is that you can also pass a children, right? So that means that you can do the toggle like this, and then maybe create a text, custom text, hit save. And then let me label. Okay, and now the custom text is being used as the label. This allows you to, of course, customize the text, and you can pass properties here like modifiers. Okay, so this is how you actually pass the color. This is label, but I think we can change this to be, okay, so I can change this to be red or blue, purple, and this is using the platform colors. And you know, you can customize it this way if you really want to, or just keep it simple, which is what I like to do. Move this and pass the label directly. And hit save. There we go. At this point, you are starting to notice how this is working. We don't want the row separator. So let's add the modifier to the date, or maybe the toggle. Let's say modifiers. And let's paste this in here. Hit save. Now it's gone. Cool. See how this looks on dark. Really nice. And we have the large title still. Cool. Now this is a self-closing tag, and it looks way cleaner. Okay, then we have something interesting. Then we have the picker. This is actually very useful for setting screens, and it saves a lot of space. Looks really cool with liquid glass, and it's a picker. Let's use the picker here. We can import this from SwiftUI. Now, if we take a look at the example here, picker also takes a children, and it's going to look something like this. So let's actually copy this, place it. So you can pass modifiers like the picker style. Let's bring this from SwiftUI modifiers. And another interesting thing here is that the picker options need a tag, and the tag is used to then provide the value depending on the selection of the user. Okay, so the tag, we can assign it actually dynamically on this array of options that I have. Just an array of strings of the options that you want. But let's actually iterate on these tags. I say tags.map, and for each tag, I'm going to return a text with the actual tag value, like that. And we can pass a key, which is going to be the index, and we need to pass the modifiers with the tag. So the tag actually needs to come from the modifiers, meaning that I cannot use the same name here, otherwise there's gonna be an issue. So I'm gonna call this item, and gonna render the item. Okay, item, and then we can actually bring the tag from the modifiers and hit save. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, this is the segmented style. And you can play around with this, like for example, inline. Inline is gonna show you the items like this. Now, if you notice, we are not seeing like the default state of the picker. And for that, I actually created this use state variable. I want to default to none, which is an option. So let's use the selected tag. The picker also takes a selection, and you can see that the option tag is for the modifier. So let's call selected tag, hit save, and now we can see the check icon here. So this is the inline. I'm not a huge fan of it. You might also be familiar with the wheel option, so use it like this. I think, you know, it's a pretty old one. The clean one is going to be the menu option, and it's going to look like this. With liquid glass, it's just really nice. Now, right now it's looking pretty tough because we don't have a label. So let's add a label here. This is going to be, yeah, tag select or something like that. Now it looks cool. But if you notice, it's blue for some reason, right? And I want that to be just regular gray as everything else. The reason for that is because I'm passing this modifier. And if I remove the modifier, just by passing the label, this is gonna be gray, which is what I like. But you can also pass it directly or customize it with modifiers. Another thing that I want to show you is that you can also nest pickers like this. Basically, I just duplicated the picker and added a picker inside of it. Handle it super cleanly, as you can see there. Right? So maybe instead of just iterating here, we can go it like that. And this is going to be the only option. You can have multiple pickers as options here. Let's put 2 of them. Right? And this is how it looks. Really cool. Looks super clean. Yeah, so in this case, we actually don't have like a default state. Maybe we can still iterate so that we have a default none here. Now you'll have all the options, plus you can nest them. And you can go deeper if you want, like having this inside of this speaker. And now you have 3 levels, which is that one, then this one, and another one with more options. Yeah, I don't recommend having a lot of nested pickers, but yeah, it's possible. Remember that if you want to separate these items, you can always create a section and then just wrap the children like that, and it's gonna be separated like that. Another cool one that I want to show you, it's gonna be the color picker. This might be useful for your application. You can pass a label and a selection of the color, and it's going to look something like this, which opens this native sheet that allows the user to pick the color. This looks really cool, and the beauty of this is that it's just one line, and you can of course receive the change event here. It's just a callback. You will get the value, and then you can set your variables. Now, to finish this lesson, let's take a look at the one that we just created versus the native one. It's pretty much the same thing. Both look exactly the same, right? Same gestures, and the reason for that is because it's fully native. And if we toggle dark mode, they look the exact same. Oh, and one more thing that I also almost forgot to mention is that, so let's take the autofocus from the title and remove it. I'm gonna copy the text field and put it at the very end of the screen, and I'm gonna give this an autofocus, right? Let's go back to the device. This is the Expo version. Let's reload. Cool thing about SwiftUI is that it automatically handles keyword handling. So if I open the keyword, it's going to automatically scroll to the point where you can actually see what you're typing. Like handling this without SwiftUI, it's pretty painful. So things like that you get by default, it's just a game changer. If you want to keep going, these 2 lessons were part of my Expo UI section in my React Native course. There's a bunch more in there. The Android version of this lesson, which is a whole different beast. Universal components, where you write the screen once and it runs native on iOS and Android and web. Custom modifiers, native state, and the whole thing. And since I'm just launching this new section in my course, I got a little hack for you. You can use the promo code ExpoUI40 at the checkout for 40% off. So if you're watching this around when it dropped, that's the move. Grab it. And here are a couple things that people don't think about. If you are using React Native at work, a lot of companies and clients will straight up cover something like this. It's a work expense, so just ask. And if money is tight and you are in a part of the world that the dollar hits different, we also have purchase parity. I really want this to be reachable for you. The link is in the description, and honestly, thank you for watching this far. It means a lot. I'll see you in the next one.